Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome. You're watching Dialogue Tonight and I am Sidra Iqbal. Here's an exclusive conversation about the Pakistan and American relationship. We know it's tricky, it's complex, and there's often a lot of hue and cry about improving this relationship, especially to get more assistance in areas that will improve Pakistan's security and stability, vis-a-vis, of course, education, health, the energy shortage. So today we are in an exclusive conversation with Mr. John Groarke, who is the Mission Director for USAID in Pakistan, and we'll definitely cover a lot of ground about what the assistance is all about, because definitely Pakistan is the second largest assistance receiving country of US $5 billion. Let's get started. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show. John, it's a very interesting juncture that we have found you here in Karachi, because I heard that this is a third phase of a memorandum of understanding signing between the USAID and the government of Sindh, particularly in areas relating to maternal and child health care. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, unfortunately, here in Pakistan, far too many mothers and children die because of a lack of access to adequate health care. And what we're doing at USAID is we're working directly with the provincial authorities here in Sindh to reach out to those Pakistanis, particularly in the rural areas of Sindh, who don't have access to adequate health care, to make sure that, for example, there's an attendant present when a mother is giving birth to her child, and then immediately thereafter to make sure that that child is getting the attention that he or she needs to survive to adulthood. And I'm very confident with the work we're doing together with the Sindh government that we're going to see improved statistics here in Sindh and eventually throughout all of Pakistan.
Now, it is my understanding that there are 5 different components of this third phase of an extension. And what have been the learnings and the key insights in the first phases? And also now you're expanding to 15 different districts. Is it because the burden of disease or the gravity of the problem is more extreme in these 15 districts?
Well, yes, that's true. But one of the lessons that we've learned is that it's not enough to just put services out there in the districts. We need to affirmatively reach out to mothers to let them know what kind of services are available and how they can get those services.
Right.
And if they need additional health care, to refer them, for example, to hospitals. But we've learned that we need to do even more than that. We need to counsel mothers on best practices, for example, with birth spacing. One of the lessons that we've learned is that when a mother has children within 2 years of each other, the mortality rate is about twice as high as it would be otherwise.
The very basic of problems, but at the same time we see that at the heart of our challenges, because of course the mother and child health care somehow hasn't improved over the years in Pakistan. Speaking about improvement, the do more mantra seems to be going back and forth between America, between the US and Pakistan. Especially in these areas that we are now forging partnerships in, Pakistan has always sought international assistance. How do you feel that the local and the national level capacity for dealing these challenges, has that improved over time?
Well, with the enactment of the 18th Amendment to the Pakistani Constitution and the devolution of authority over social services to the provinces, it's presented a challenge, not only to the provincial government here in Sindh, but to the other provinces as well. For example, of the Sindhi Health Ministry to be able to deliver services to the citizens of Sindh. And that's a major part of what we're doing at USAID. We're not here to deliver services directly to the people of Sindh. We're here to help the Sindhi government, in this case the Sindhi Health Ministry, to enable it to reach out and provide health services to the Sindhi people. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen. As we speak, thousands of healthcare workers are being trained. New infrastructure is being created. And as I mentioned earlier, the Sindhi Health Ministry is reaching out to the most disadvantaged mothers throughout the province, including in these 16 districts, to make quality health care available to them.
Right. And these two ends of the spectrum, everybody keeps talking about them. The ones that require these services, the communities, the mothers, the children themselves, and of course the capacity at the top end. What about the practitioners? Because I understand the agency, and through your programs you're able to interact with those like the lady health workers, the doctors, the paramedics who are actually going to be in the field delivering these services. What are their sentiments like? What do they feel are their greatest challenges?
Well, again, I think that among the greatest challenges is the lack of awareness among, for example, many mothers about how some of the more simple decisions they can make can help to ensure the survival of their babies. Another issue is the availability of contraceptives and other commodities. We work with the ministry, for example, to make sure there's a clean and smooth supply chain so that healthcare professionals can provide those commodities to Pakistanis who are in need. I think transportation is another issue. When you go out into these rural areas, they can be hard to reach. There's an insufficient number of doctors and nurses and healthcare workers, and that's why we need, for example, the lady healthcare workers. These are all challenges, but I think it's important to remember that despite those challenges, we can never give up, because I think we can all agree that all Pakistanis, no matter whether they're male or female or rich or poor or Punjabi or Sindhi, they have a right to quality health services, and that is the goal that we hope to reach.
Undoubtedly, and because you've had such a tremendous, stellar record of achievements in your previous assignments in Iraq, in Egypt, and of course in Afghanistan, how different are the problems perhaps in Punjab, Sindh, KPK and Balochistan from each other?
Well, yes, as we were discussing earlier, as a student of Pakistan, because this is the first time I've been here, I've been struck by what a diverse country Pakistan is. But one of the things about Pakistan that I would say distinguishes it from some of the other countries where I've worked is the security challenges that it's faced.
Right.
And I know that we Americans recognize the sacrifices that Pakistan has made, particularly in recent years, in trying to turn back the tide of militancy and terrorism, and the cost that that's exacted from Pakistan.
I think it draws more attention to it. It is challenges and these unfortunate tragic incidents that kind of strengthens our resolve to fight back. But John, not a lot of people in Pakistan realize that a $5 billion US assistance program is approved for Pakistan, and this is going in various directions. But it also comes to my mind that all the areas that USAID works with are challenge areas for Pakistan. So how do you divide these assistance, and what is that roster of priorities for USAID?
I think it's important, first of all, to note that it's not a coincidence that Pakistan is one of the two largest recipients of American aid. I think it reflects the importance that the United States places on its relationship with Pakistan, and the importance that we see with the shared value with Pakistanis, that Pakistan be a stable, secure, and prosperous country. Because if Pakistan is stable, secure, and prosperous, not only does it help Pakistan, it helps the United States. This is a tough neighborhood, and Pakistan is our friend. We work very closely with the Pakistani government. We also reach out to ordinary Pakistanis because we recognize that the work we do has to be consistent with your priorities. We're guests here. We're not here to tell Pakistanis what to do. We're here to respond to your needs and to work and support your priorities. And as I'm sure you know, the priorities, or some of the priorities here, are pretty clear: energy, health, education, agriculture, helping young people to get jobs. And these are areas that we're all working in presently.
जो पाकिस्तान की तरजीहात हैं उन्हीं तरजीहात को सामने रखते हुए, उसी को समझते हुए USAID पार्टनरशिप्स फॉर्म करना चाहता है। और ये कोई इत्तेफाक की बात नहीं है कि वो दो ममालिक जो सबसे ज़्यादा इसके मुतहम्मिल पाए गए हैं या उनके साथ काम करने को ज़रूरी करार दिया गया है, वो है अफ़गानिस्तान और पाकिस्तान। ये खुसूसी इंटरव्यू जारी रहेगा, एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेते हैं एंड वील बी राइट बैक। वेलकम बैक आफ्टर द ब्रेक। आप देख रहे हैं डायलॉग टुनाइट। मैं हूं सिद्रा इकबाल एंड दिस इज एन एक्सक्लूसिव कॉन्वर्सेशन विद मिस्टर जॉन ग्रोक, द मिशन डायरेक्टर ऑफ USAID to Pakistan. So John, we were talking about the variety of areas that USAID would like to partner with Pakistan, and you mentioned the 18th Amendment. Do you think after the devolution of powers at the provincial level and at the provincial government level, has it become easier to work with the governments and with these departments?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because there are two parts to this. The first is that clearly, in principle, devolving authority for the provision of services like health, like education to the provinces is a good thing. But the downside of doing that was in some cases the provinces were not completely ready to accept the responsibility and accept the resources so that they could provide services like health and like education to the people in the provinces. And that's one of the things that we're helping the provincial government here in Sindh work on, to make sure that they get the access to health care that they deserve, particularly women and children.
But do you not feel that when we talk about pan-national problems, Pakistan is still one of the countries struggling with eradicating polio from the from the population, and of course the problems of dengue that causes a health crisis. Do you see a national integrated plan for such health challenges emerging?
Well, just because the 18th Amendment devolved most authority for the delivery of services to the provinces, it doesn't mean that all authorities have been devolved. For example, some of the problems that you just discussed, the National Health Ministry still does play a role in areas like vaccinations and surveilling problems like polio. And by the way, I'm absolutely thrilled to say that the situation with polio here in Pakistan has improved significantly over the past year. Thanks to the Pakistani government and our colleagues in the United Nations agencies, many more children have been vaccinated. There's been a lot more work done to get those kids who are crossing the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. We've seen the cases of polio this year go down below 3 digits. I think it's maybe only 50 or 60. So I'm optimistic that we will see the day when polio is eradicated from Pakistan. But you're right, that's the kind of issue that needs to be addressed on a national scale.
There is that resource and the facility part of the challenge where we say that there are not enough doctors, there are not enough hospitals, there are not enough facilities out there. But what would you say about the mindset of people? So it's a young, youthful population. Are they more inclined to change? Do you see that positive behavioral change coming through?
Well, not only here in Pakistan, but in the other countries where I've worked, I have been struck by the attitudes and the breadth of awareness of the new generation. Even here in Pakistan, I think a lot of it is because of new technology, social media, Facebook, television. People seem to be much more aware of what's going on, not only in their own country, but in the rest of the world. And I think it creates a really exciting opportunity. One of the challenges here in Pakistan and elsewhere is to make sure that those people get the education that they deserve so that they can steer their passion and their creativity and their interest in a way that will help them achieve their goals.
Do you feel that the societies and the more traditional communities, be it in rural Punjab, rural KPK or rural Sindh, are they open to newer ideas? Are they open to better medical facilities? Or are they still relying on age-old methods of dealing with their health issues?
Well, I think that young people are certainly more open to new methods, new ways of looking at things, as you just mentioned. I think it's more of a challenge when you're talking about older people who are more tradition-bound. So we have to look beyond people's individual attitudes about change and tradition. It's an example where just if knowledge is imparted, people can make their own decisions, regardless of how traditional they are, that ultimately will save lives and make for a healthier Pakistan.
In the common Pakistani mindset, USAID's contribution or partnership in the realms of education and health seems natural. But I noticed that you also mention areas such as energy, which are traditionally not really taken to be USAID's sphere of work. How are you assisting Pakistan in its really grave challenge of energy?
Well, we believe that Pakistan's energy shortage deducts about 2% off of its annual economic growth rate. So the lack of energy here is really hurting the economy.
True.
And it affects almost every part of the country. It prevents businesses from growing. It hurts kids who are doing their homework because the lights go out. It affects the healthcare system. So many things are touched by energy, and the Pakistani government has made it clear to us that it is among their highest priorities. So therefore, it's been among USAID's highest priorities, and we've invested about $1 billion US in energy. And I'm thrilled to say that working with our Pakistani colleagues, we've helped put about 1,700 megawatts onto the national grid. And just to let you know how much energy that is, that provides reliable electricity to almost 20 million Pakistanis. So we really are making progress in the energy sector. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's a priority. We're doing a lot, and we're going to continue to do a lot.
There's a lot of assessment and analysis that goes into understanding the shortage and the problem at hand. And we see a number of promises being made by our policymakers and heads of the state about when we will be able to overcome the energy shortage. What, in your assessment, and with the kind of progress and the kind of work that is being done right now, is the year or the time frame when Pakistan should be able to get over the energy shortage issue?
It is going to take years to overcome the shortage. But like with so many other things, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop with what we're doing, because we are making progress. One of the problems that Pakistan faces in the energy sector, it's not just that insufficient energy is being generated. It's with the transmission and distribution system. A lot of the transmission lines have deteriorated from a lack of operations and maintenance. So we've been working with the government and the provinces to upgrade the transmission lines. And we've also worked a lot with the distribution companies. These are the companies that actually deliver electricity to customers. We've worked with the distribution companies here in Sindh. They need also to upgrade their technology, their infrastructure, but also the way that they conduct their business. For example, electricity shouldn't be free. People have got to pay for it, because you need to recover the cost of operating power plants and transmission lines in order to keep them properly maintained. So all of these things that we're working on, and we're making progress.
Right. Another key area where I see USAID having a very strong partnership, or at least a visionary alliance, is in terms of promoting entrepreneurship in Pakistan. The Prime Minister launched his own program where there was financial assistance given to young people across the country. But I noticed a flagship micro-entrepreneurship program for women, especially in communities relating to, say, Punjab and KPK by the USAID. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, you've touched on something that's really important, because particularly with such a large youth population, the future of economic growth in Pakistan has to come from the private sector.
Right.
And in order for that to come from the private sector, there has to be new businesses being formed. To form new businesses, you need, in addition to energetic young people, you need capital. They need to borrow money, or they need to get equity. And most importantly, women have to be a part of this, because no country, not Pakistan, not any other country, is going to succeed without utilizing the full abilities of 100% of its population, not 50% of its population. And that's why at USAID we put so much emphasis on including women in our programs. And as you said, that includes entrepreneurship. So that the many women here in Pakistan who are creative and energetic have access to training and capital so they can start their own business. We are working with Pakistani banks right now. We have a program providing about $60 million in loans available to small and micro enterprises. And again, we're hoping that as the years go by, we'll see the momentum generated, more private sector businesses, more businesses created and run by women, more profitability, more jobs, and more economic growth.
Before we head for a break, one quick question would be, since you worked in Afghanistan and you also have worked in Pakistan, there is that acute sense that because of the security scenario that you pointed to earlier, there has been, massive internally displaced people's movement. Pakistan faced that when there was an operation going on in Swat. It's still facing that while an operation is underway in North Waziristan. USAID works closely with the problems and challenges of the IDPs. What is the ground situation right now in KPK?
Well, this is another good news story, because the Pakistan government, as you know, has a plan to move the displaced back to their homes in the tribal areas. And there's a timetable for doing that, and the timetable is being adhered to. Secretary Kerry, as I'm sure you know, promised $250 million in aid to Pakistan for the care of the internally displaced. That money is now being spent providing food, shelter, medicine, water for the approximately 1 million Pakistanis from the tribal areas who are still primarily in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And we're continuing to work with the Pakistani government to provide them with the basic necessities of life. And then, just as importantly, when they go back to the tribal areas, USAID is providing about 6 months of additional support to help these formerly displaced people get back on their feet and start their lives over again. But just as importantly, we recognize that moving the displaced back to the tribal areas, that's not the end of the story. In some ways, it's only the beginning. We're working there to try to improve people's lives. Again, to help them create businesses, to see that they get the health and education that they deserve, to make sure that there's infrastructure, energy, roads, schools, so that eventually the tribal areas will no longer be the poorest and most backward part of Pakistan.
That is absolutely essential. सिर्फ ये बात यहाँ तक महदूद नहीं है कि ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग हो, ये रियलाइजेशन हो कि जो IDPs हैं उनका अपने घरों में वापस जाना अहम है, बल्कि उनको तमाम तर वो सहूलियात दी जाएं ताकि वो अपनी ज़िंदगी को दोबारा मामूल पे ला सके. एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेते हैं and we'll be right back. And welcome back after the break. आप देख रहे हैं Dialogue Tonight. मैं हूँ सिद्रा इकबाल. ये exclusive conversation Mr. John Groarke के साथ, who is the mission director of USAID in Pakistan. It's very encouraging and reassuring to learn about all these wonderful projects and initiatives. But as a skeptic Pakistani, one of the key things that pop up in my mind would be what happens when this assistance or this funding or this support dries up. Do you see that in the long term, the national infrastructure, the governments, the provincial governments and departments, will they be equipped enough to keep it running in the long run?
Well, this is one of the reasons why so much of our assistance is devoted to capacity development, to bring in the technical know-how so that the government here in Pakistan will have the ability to deliver these services themselves in the long term. But there's another key component to your question, and that's about resources. Eventually, Pakistan will have to generate more of its own resources for health, for education, for the other types of services that need to be delivered to the Pakistani people. Because you're right, donors like the United States and like the multilaterals, they may not be able to provide the current level of funding that they do.
Right.
So ultimately it will be up to Pakistan to do it themselves.
Do you feel that there is introspection within the American society and the American government as well? Because we keep hearing, the cries of the taxpayers back in your country as well, asking what donors are doing across the globe, across the world. So is this partnership, as you've rightly pointed towards, is it long-term? Is it the next 10 years that we're looking at USAID coming to Pakistan's assistance?
Well, certainly we expect to be here in the long term. As I mentioned in the very beginning, the size of the program here reflects the importance that the United States places on Pakistan. But we are very aware of the enormity of the challenges and that those challenges will not be solved overnight.
Right.
So I think it's going to take a long time, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to be here for the long term. And let me finish by referring to the first part of your question. I know that sometimes back in the United States, there are people who complain about economic assistance and how it's spent and what it's used for. But make no mistake, the American people are generous people.
Absolutely.
And when they know what's being done and the good work that's being done here in Pakistan, for example, the theme that we've seen today of helping mothers and children, I think the support back in America, it's there.
There's no doubting the generosity of the American public, but as you mentioned, the emphasis is on the good news. So when you're setting yourself, objectives and benchmarks, can you tell us what have been the success factors or the success milestones in the Pakistani context for you?
Well, I would go all the way back even to the 1960s to the Green Revolution,
Right.
where the new agriculture technologies that were introduced created or resulted in a burgeoning of food production which prevented people from starving. So right there, half a century ago, you had an enormous success. And you've had other successes since then in a variety of sectors. We talked a little bit ago about energy, where despite the existing challenges, almost 20 million Pakistanis now have access to more reliable electricity. It's a battle that is a long-term battle. We know what the challenges are in health, in education, in agriculture, but I think that our successors may be sitting in this room 10 or 20 years from now and talking about the successes that resulted from the work that we're doing now.
So these variety of challenges that we speak about, be it education, healthcare facilities, livelihoods, etc., sometimes when we debate out a solution or having a more equitable society, do you think that perhaps a solution that people propose is oversimplified, that if everyone was educated, had the best healthcare facilities, was earning enough, then we wouldn't be seeing this violent outburst of extremism there and now and again?
Well, that may be true because each situation in each country has to be viewed within its own context.
Yeah.
But for example, when young people don't have an opportunity, when they don't have an education, when they don't have an opportunity to find work, when they fall in with the wrong crowd, it's much more likely that bad things will happen. So I think we can safely say that if we're able to bring these things to young people, health, education, jobs, it's much more likely that they will not be seduced by political and violent extremism.
There's always that very unfair comparison. Each time you try to say that maybe sports or public spaces or arts and poetry and theater, all these finer things in life could perhaps play a very positive role in positive youth engagement, people tend to go back and say, but you have very basic problems relating to education and health. How can you be even concentrating on the frills and the secondary issue? What is your understanding of the matter?
Well, you really have to do both. Sometimes the benefits in health and education take years to manifest themselves, but sometimes young people need help immediately. And work that civil society does, community groups, sports, theater, other ways of engaging youth, can address those immediate needs.
Right. The beginning of the new year is always such an auspicious time. It's brimming with energy, and one is always hoping to, sort of upkeep their resolution. So the year 2016, very important year for Pakistan for a variety of reasons. How do you foresee this year rolling out for USAID in the country?
Well, we're looking forward to a lot of exciting accomplishments. For example, I anticipate that working with the Pakistani energy authorities, we'll be able to put even more megawatts on the grid and to put them to use through improved transmission and distribution systems. Right. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the agreement that we signed here today. I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of the new Let Girls Learn initiative. This is the new $70 million initiative that was announced at the White House during Prime Minister Sharif's visit, which is going to bring thousands of girls into the school system and help ensure that they get a quality education. I'm looking forward to seeing more Pakistani farmers getting their crops to market, particularly the outstanding mangoes that are produced here in Pakistan and which should increasingly be exported so that farmers can earn the profits that they deserve. So I think there are a lot of good things that are going to happen this year. Not everything is going to be accomplished, but year by year, we're seeing things getting better.
It's definitely something to look forward to. You've certainly gotten me and my viewers excited about the year 2016. Thank you so much for taking out time and for speaking to us. I'm sure these insights and these understandings of not just Pakistan's problem, but also the kind of US assistance, particularly USAID's assistance in a variety of these areas, is going to shift perceptions and make people understand the gravity of the issues and the ground realities better. Of course, if you have feedback and comments about the program and the conversation, you can write to me on Twitter @Sidra Iqbal, likewise on Facebook, facebook.com/SidraIqbal.official. We'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.